Welcome, everyone. Today, we're talking about the power of experience, resilience, and breaking stereotypes with old ladies against underwater garbage, OLAUG. This incredible group of women isn't just cleaning up the environment, they're proving that age is no barrier to making a difference. Aged 64 to 85, this group of women dive into the ponds of Cape Cod, hauling out hundreds of pounds of garbage to restore and protect these waters. Too often, older women are overlooked or underestimated, but OLAUG is turning that narrative upside down, diving in, leading by example, and showing that wisdom, strength, and community can create real change. The Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage have made waves in the media with features in the New York Times, NBC, CBS, National Geographic, The Guardian, and The Drew Barrymore Show, showcasing their inspiring activism and environmental impact. Today, we'll be joined by three incredible women from the Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage team: Trish Cory, a swimmer and kayaker; Allison Leschen, a swimmer; and Jean Borden, also a swimmer. For this episode, we'll be dividing the interview into two parts. In the first part, you'll hear from Trish and Allison, and in part two, we'll be joined by Jean. So, Trish and Allison, thank you so much for coming on the Global Goodness Podcast. I'm so honored to have you here.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Kim.
So, I'd love to just start from the beginning. Can you tell our listeners what Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage is and what inspired you to join?
Trish, maybe direct it to one or the other of us, otherwise we'll be
Sure.
like,
Trish, why don't you start first?
So Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage is a group of older, mature women, as you mentioned, 64 and older, up to 85. Our founder is 85, just turned 85. And we gather together over the course of the summer months here on Cape Cod, and we go to ponds with a planned execution for cleanup of those ponds using kayakers to collect the garbage that we who swim are diving down with snorkels. We use snorkels, we dive down, we see garbage that's been there sometimes for years and years and years, sometimes really new. And we collect all of that. And there's a process that we follow as we go through to make sure everybody's staying safe. But the whole purpose of it is to help, as you mentioned, restore the ecology of the pond primarily. But secondarily, there's a lot of benefits for us to be part of this group. We're good friends. We're of a like mind. We're the same kind of personality, I think, in many ways. We love the adventure of what we're doing. It's funny because our name says we're against garbage, but we actually love to find underwater garbage. It's like a treasure hunt for us when we go out and we're on these dives. So they're very organized. We scout in the season before what ponds we're going to go to. We make sure there's enough garbage there to have a concerted effort to get the kayakers and all of our swimmers there to do the cleanup. We like to involve our homeowners associations so they can see what we're doing and help further that cause after we've left for that day, and try to keep the ponds cleaner. So it's just a great effort. To the second part of your question, why did I join? I had a friend who was part of I have a friend who was part of the group, and she kept saying, you're a great swimmer. You should come out. You would love this. Everybody in the group is fun. They're wonderful women. They're very accomplished. They love the adventure. And I thought, for me, that was the key word, the adventure of it. I'm sort of an adrenaline junkie, and I love to think that there was. I guess I'd say if you can do good and have fun doing it, sign me up for that. And this checked those boxes for me. I came the first day to the tryouts that Allison was leading, and we had to, for swimmers and kayakers, go through a thorough tryout. When I first thought of it, I thought, tryouts, how hard can it be? You dive down, you pick up a piece of garbage. What is it? What is there to it? But there's a lot to it. In the course of the years that Allison and some of the other original team members discovered and learned is that there's a lot of safety elements. There's a lot of prep that goes into planning these dives, coordination with different groups who are involved in that, the trash pickup, the homeowners, as I mentioned. So there's a lot that happens with that group. And so we've learned that over the course of time, and that makes it all better when we do it. So for me, going to those tryouts, going through the process, and then meeting the people, it was all about the people. I think it always will be. It's about the connections that we have with each other. It's about that sense of community. And then it's about the joy in what we're doing. It's great. I'll always be an environmentalist and always want to cherish the special ecology of Cape Cod and leave a legacy that we've done something better in our lifetimes for that. But I also will love to continue the memories and the things that we're doing together as a group in OLAUG because it's just so much fun. It's just so much fun.
I love that. I love the do good and have fun doing it.
Yeah.
And I have to say, my son is in swimming lessons. So while he's in swimming lessons, I've been swimming laps in the pool. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I know I don't meet the age requirements, but I wonder if I can swim far enough to join the OLAUG one day.
I know. We hear that
Allison.
from so many people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
well, what you guys are doing is so inspiring. Allison, what about you? What inspired you to join OLAUG?
Yeah, I've been a pretty much daily, distance swimmer for fun and exercise for, going on 40 years at least, I think. And I will swim in a pool in the winter around here, which, it's tough to swim outside year round, but there's nothing like open water swimming for me. My very favorite is the ocean, but I also love, we have hundreds of freshwater kettle ponds here on Cape Cod. It's kind of a very unusual geology, and they were all formed during the glaciers. And they're just these beautiful jewels of
Mm,
fresh water, and a lot of them in a quality of water that you've just never experienced before. It's like soft and lovely, and just
mm,
there's just nothing like it. And so, I've been swimming in these ponds for years, and when I heard about this group, and I'm also a scuba diver. I'm a marine biologist, and I've done a ton of diving. I'm just super comfortable in the water. I love being in the water. And so when I heard about this group, I was like, oh, this has my name all over it, And so when they had tryouts, I went, and as Trish said, you need to be able to swim a half a mile, I think we say, right, in 30 minutes, but you need to be able to swim a mile and be very comfortable, diving down 8 or 9 feet, mask and snorkel, and be able to really stay in the water for 90 minutes or so. So it's not for the faint of heart. I think there are a lot of people younger than us who would not be able to do it, but for me, it was just a perfect fit. And then once I got there and met the other women and started doing it, and I was like, this is a miracle to find a group that I can do what for me is one of my favorite things in the world to do, and be doing it with these incredible women and having so much fun and doing good for the environment is, I realize I say it was kind of a miracle. And so it was just this amazing combination of factors that made it just really so fun and so great and rewarding. And it's been, I think, a little bit of a surprise to all of us how how much we've sort of taken off in the media. But I think people are really hungry for good news, which is what your podcast, of course, is all about, and people doing good things instead of terrible things. And so I think, to be able to inspire other people to find joy, find what is joyful in your life, and then figure out how to, do good doing it. And it's been amazing.
Yeah.
So
I love that. It sounds like it's really such a good fit for both of you. Just talking about, your love of swimming and the ocean and how you've been able to find that, in the water and with a group of people. I totally get that too. I grew up, in Vancouver right next to the ocean, and my love is the ocean. I'm lucky enough to live in a bunch of lakes. And so I really understand that passion that you have. Just swimming in the water in itself is just magical. And then being able to clean up and then do it with a fellow group of women and having fun at the same time. That sounds like, check, check, check all the boxes. Like, it's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
I wanted to speak to, the stereotypes of older women when we also talk about, why this is so popular in the news and why so many people are catching on to it. One, I think it's such a good news story. And then Trish and I were also talking before, society also holds this vision of, sometimes older women being as weak or out of touch or irrelevant. And I guess I wanted to ask you, have you ever encountered these stereotypes in your environmentalism or everyday life? Or, on the flip side, have you seen any changes in how people are perceiving you as older women as a result of your efforts?
I have a lot of answers to that question. If you don't mind, Allison,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll jump in on this one. Um, how to your point, Kim, how do we see this differently, in terms of maybe in our lifetimes or this, the span that we've been in the workforce and we've been contributing to society in terms of what our culture says is important, having a job, raising kids, those kinds of things. I would say there's been a dramatic difference, but from when our parents did this, from our mothers and what we learned from them, we had a much greater opportunity to have impact. But I will say that, I'd love to say we've done better for our daughters. My own daughter, and I have this discussion a lot where I say, I'm often the only woman in the boardroom still. I'm often the only woman in the conference room when we have executive leadership meetings. And I'm sure Allison has experienced this as well in science. It's whether it's business or science, there's still a need for us to push harder
Hmm.
as women. And I remember sitting in a conference room, and I was the only woman in the room. There was 9 other men, and the man who was leading the meeting said, "Okay, who's taking notes? We need somebody to take notes. Trish, take notes."
Hmm.
Thought, are you kidding
Wow.
me?
Yeah.
And I just sat there and I thought, I kind of looked down, and the people I work with thought, oh no, he didn't say that. And I thought, we just really can't let things like that go by without just educating and expressing that that's not okay for you to say to the woman in the room, take notes, and I said to him, it's so funny. I'm thinking back, and I was being sarcastic because I just, wanted to make a point. And I said, I don't remember taking a course at Cornell or when I got my master's at BU in note taking. It just didn't come up much. So if there's someone else who's better at that in the room, please feel free, jump in and take notes, because I just wanted them to understand that we bring so much value to the table, and the fact that we're women shouldn't matter to what that value is. So we do have still some work to do around that. I'm in a company now where I'm the only woman on the executive leadership team. And again,
Mm.
it's in technology, it's in healthcare. I understand that there are limitations in different industries. But I don't mean to be on a soapbox here. This isn't the point of why we want to share our story with you. But I do think it is important to say, yes, we've made progress for women,
Hmm.
um, but we're not there yet. We
Mm-mm.
have work to do, and especially for older women. Uh, Many of the times we've done presentations about OLAUG to different groups that are often predominantly women, they come up to us afterwards and say, we feel transparent. We love what you've done because
Mhm.
people are paying attention to older women because of
Yeah.
you and your message.
Yeah.
And that is so important to us. That is part of our mission, that we have this incredible, valuable resource as a society. These older women of experience, of knowledge, of a temperament that is so useful, without drama, without all the things that we let go as we get older, uh,
Hmm.
and all the things that we should carry on as we get older, the experience, as I said, and the knowledge. Those are things that we should value, and the society should really want to use and take hold of and say, we've got this untapped resource here we really should be using. And so I hope that if there are listeners who can, that message might resonate with, that they're feeling
Hmm.
that way, then we want them to know they should be so strong about moving forward our message and about feeling confident in the value that they bring.
Yeah, and I think just to add to what Trish said, that however, whatever the word is, exploited or invisible women of working age may feel, that just gets, not the exploitation goes away because we basically become invisible, I think, and irrelevant. And I think literally invisible is how I would categorize it. I think it's not like animosity toward older women. It's not, there's no sort of, nastiness directed toward them. It's just nobody notices them. They're just sort
Yeah.
of flies on the wall and, whatever. And so I think this has been a little bit of a surprise, but it shouldn't be upon reflection, that just by showing that we are capable of doing something that really probably nobody expected we would be, it maybe can start shifting that narrative a little bit, and that put us on the map a little bit, I guess. And I'm just at the begin. I'm one of the youngest ones. I think Trish is too, right? And we, as we said, we go all the way up to 85. And if we're feeling that now, I can only imagine how the 80 somethings are feeling that. But boy, Susan Bauer, the founder, and the 85-year-old, she is a spitfire. She is hard to ignore, in a great way. Like she will not be ignored, and I think we need to do more of that. I think we need to just really show people and show society that there we do have a lot more to give, and they ignore it at their peril, I guess, or at their loss. I think it's just a real loss. I think there are many cultures where older people are revered, and ours is clearly not one of them. And I just think that that's too bad, that there's a real opportunity for more of the passing on of the wisdom and the accumulated knowledge and everything else, that we've accumulated in our lifetime. And what a shame to just have that kind of fade into the background and go away, and in the same way that you think of a company, that you think of somebody who's been in this company for 30 years and has all this institutional knowledge, and boy, isn't it a bummer when they leave before their replacement comes, and you get to kind of do the mind dump on onto the new person, and now all that's gone, and that new person has to start all over again. And what a silly waste of everybody's efforts to have to, every generation has to learn the same things over and over again, because we don't kind of have that mechanism because there isn't the such interaction, or there's no kind of mechanism for unless you happen to have a wonderful grandmother, or whatever, who sits down and imparts her wisdom. But as a culture, we don't do that. And there's no no forum, no mechanism really for that to happen. And so I think this is just one, tiny way that to maybe start people thinking like, maybe older women have something to offer. And wouldn't that be cool to sit down with one of them and have a conversation?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, like you were just saying, hopefully the conversation that we're having today is just part of that little opening and changing the shift. And, I have this written down pretty much exactly what you were saying, Allison. So I did recently hear someone talk about, the term of the elders versus the elderly, which hold really different meanings, right? And so I'm just going to read this so I get it right. But they talk about, the elders is often used in cultural, indigenous, and spiritual contexts to refer to older individuals who are wise, experienced, and deserving of respect. Whereas the elderly, which is what we often use is in our like westernized society, is commonly used in medical policy, caregiving contexts, often referring to people in their later stages of life who are needing assistance. And our society really needs to start shifting that and using the term the elders, reference to older people who have that wisdom to share, like you were saying, have all this contextual information and wisdom, and we are not looking at that in the right way. Um, and so, yeah, my thought was before, like, what do you think about this? But, Allison, you were just speaking to, and, Trish, what do you think about those two terms that are similar and so different?
So different. And one has a connotation of respect and one of disrespect.
Mhm.
One that to your point, elders um, imparts this wisdom that comes with that phrase, and a wisdom that is respected and wants to, people want to hear, people want to sit down by your side as an elder and have discussions and learn from you. The elderly in our society, we want to move them away, we want to put them in places where other people can take care of them.
Mhm.
um, we don't have that same level of respect in our culture for the elderly that, as we've talked about, many other cultures do. So I do think that we have to we have to change our thinking not only about who is elderly, but about being an elder. So when I think of what our group is doing, I don't think that if you looked at us on a swim or a dive,
Mhm.
that you would look at us and say, these are old people. We don't fit any of the definition of old. We all need to rethink what old means in the first place. I would love to go have a toe-to-toe conversation with somebody who decided that you're old at 65 and need to stop working. Why? That may have been a definition 40 years ago, but it isn't today. And
Mhm.
I think that that should be a choice we all make, but not a decision made for us. I definitely think that one of the reasons our group is so popular, if you will, or checks the boxes for media is because we redefine what old is. I think people first hear our story and say, "Oh, wow, a group of old women on Cape Cod picking up garbage. How cute is that?"
Mhm.
That I actually put in an AI search, what would be a good definition for old ladies against underwater garbage and what would the logo look like? And it came back and said an elderly gray-haired woman with a bun in her hair, wearing a nostalgic hat, and she should be plump and walk along the beach carefully holding a grabber so she doesn't have to bend over to pick up trash. And I thought, even AI is ageist, you can't get away from it. Like, it pulls all of these millions of data points, and that's what it came back with. I just thought this is wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
When we are together as a group, we never think old. We don't think anything about age. We don't think anything about what we're there to do together and have fun. That age never comes into it. So The fact that we call ourselves old lady is ironic. Old ladies against underwater garbage is to get that attention. We hit it straight on. Old ladies, period. Stop, full stop.
We're
Because
embracing some
we're
what's
embracing it.
often been used as a disparaging type thing. We're saying we own it. We're going to
Yeah.
embrace.
Yeah. And
Yes.
just, I like that you're saying that, like, yeah, you own it, but, there's nothing wrong with being an old lady.
Right.
Like, everyone's going to get old. This is a
Why is
fact
that
of
an
life.
insult? Like,
There's,
right?
there
Why
shouldn't
should
be an
that be an
insult.
insult?
Yeah.
Where did I read? I don't think it was on your material, Kim, but just recently I saw this fun quote that said something like, be careful of being ageist. Being ageist will catch up with you someday. And and it's a great it's true. It's like how do you want to be treated when you're 70 or 75? Or do you want to be thought of as this cute little dottery, incapable, invisible thing? It's like, well, no, then how should you treat the people who are that age now, or think of them now? What do you want to consider yourself when you become that? And I don't mean you, I mean
Yeah.
those, societal
Yeah.
members.
Yeah. Yeah.
How think about how you want to be treated. Do you want your life to essentially stop when you turn 65? Do you think it will? Of course not. And so why is that your expectation for everybody else? So I
Yeah.
think people and young people don't think that way because it seems so far away, but it isn't.
Yeah. Before you know it.
Yeah.
It's something that we hope when we do presentations about what we're doing or podcasts like this, that we hope people understand that if they're feeling like that, that they can follow in our footsteps, that we hope we inspire them. Maybe they don't live near ponds and maybe they're not swimmers, but if they can, what I call it, find your gang for good, find those people that you love being with that make you happy, and find something you can fix. There's a million things in this world you can do and make those things better. I just say to my kids, if you see the problem, fix the problem. You own it. And that might mean cleaning out a garden, a public garden, or a playground, or some other thing near you. But there's no shortage of need in this world. So please get some friends together and understand that you can and should go out and do it.
But I think what we've really tapped into, and we both alluded to this earlier, is that we're not just sort of doing this volunteer thing because we should, and it's the right thing to do. It we've found something that brings us joy, and that's a lot easier to stick to, and it's and continue to do good. Like it's terrific that it does good, and the fact that it brings us joy is what makes it sustainable, and kind of will doing it as long as we possibly can, I think. And I think that's key to what Trish just said, is don't just go volunteer at whatever because you feel like you should volunteer. Figure out what, as I said before, I still remember at my college graduation, was Frank Rhodes president when you were there? He was
Went to the
British,
same
and we
university.
both went to Cornell, and he said, to the graduates, he said, find your passion and then figure out how to make a living at it.
Ugh,
And it's a very similar thing. It's like, find your passion and then figure out how to do good with it.
yeah.
As a retiree, you're not necessarily looking to figure out how to make money at it, but figure out how to continue to do good in the world and make an impact in the world and be visible in the world, um, and show the world that you have something to offer. So,
It's like so simple yet so profound,
yeah.
and so many of us kind of forget about that, finding the joy when we're just kind of bogged down in the everyday things we have to do. And speaking of finding joy, you talked about having the group of women that you have, and you have so much fun with them. So what does sisterhood and camaraderie mean to you within OLAUG? This group of women that you get to swim with and find joy with and volunteer with.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess, some of us live there's several of us who live in Falmouth in one town or pretty close, and then we're sort of scattered a little bit down the Cape. But we do try, and so we gather for the swims. We gather for a handful of meetings during the year. We've recently started doing, or the last year, I guess, we've done 3 or 4 or 5 movie nights, I guess, at one person's house. And so really looking for ways to not only connect during the swims, but outside of the swims as well. Um, and yeah, just hanging out, eating cookies. That's kind of our trademark is, we always we when we go to clean up a pond, and we usually work with the, as Trish said, the homeowners or pond association. They always say, well, do you need an honorarium? And we say, nope, just cookies. We need homemade cookies. And that's our payment. And so that's kind of you know, our preferred currency, I guess. And we just really enjoy each other's company. We just had a movie night a couple of weeks ago, and a bunch of people came, and it was a lot of fun. So, and I swim with Jean, who you'll be talking to later, pretty much every day. Yeah, I see a couple other people pretty regularly, but yeah. So, and Trish, I don't know about you, if you have.
Yeah, I think I'd second all of that and add to it a little bit. I think as we get older and you lose some of the connections that you may have had through work or through other involvement that you had, or your family is, further away, and you get this increasing sense of isolation. And I think in our society today, that's even more profound.
Yeah.
Particularly for older women who, statistics say are going to outlast your partners. And
Hmm.
so I think it's important for us to find these opportunities that we get to bond with other women of our ages, and we get to create those opportunities for joy,
Hmm.
and it improves so much in your life. We have women who said, I was so alone. I went through some medical situation, or my husband passed, or I just moved here. And this group was a lifesaver for them. Literally, it took them from being very isolated and alone to being very committed and involved. And I think so much statistics just say stay social as you get older. It's a key element to your success, to your happiness. So that's what we're doing. We found this
Hmm.
group that brings joy, that helps us feel good about what we're doing. It's a great purpose to have. And for some of our group, I honestly think it's a lifeline in
Yeah.
some ways, that you get to have a reason to leave your house, and you get to feel so good about it. And I read something this week that said women, 70% of women who spend time with friends, hang out with friends, other women, feel prettier. And I thought, that's so
Mm.
interesting. What is it about women friendship? But it's that we lift each other up.
Yeah.
There's just something innate about those friendships that make you feel better about yourself. And so it makes sense. And I think that that's what we need to do for each other. And I think that as you get to our age, the drama's gone, the competition, you let it all go, none of it matters, right? And you just start to appreciate each other for what you are. And there's so much value to that you give to each other, and
Hmm.
that you then take away for yourself. When you do something good for someone else, you always feel better for it. So I think that's what this sisterhood does. I think any sisterhood or women having a chance to be together brings those kind of benefits.
I love that. I feel like just with the sisterhood, like that's so important. We're such social beings, and like you said, there is such a isolation when women age because you're not part of the workforce, you're not as close to your family anymore, you're not deep in that caregiving stage where it takes up so much of your bandwidth. But then I also love that when we were talking before, Trish, you had talked about how just mindset shifts as you age as well. And you just feel so much freer. You're not lost in the drama of life. And we talked about, getting pictures taken in your bathing suit and no one cares. You're just there having a good time and you see everyone, the look on your faces in the photos is just joy. Just like you said, you're having a great time. And I think that is also wisdom that you shared with me because I think I mentioned before, like I'm in my mid 40s and I'm, dipping my toes, even like maybe calf deep now and that like not caring and kind of releasing that drama. But it's very exciting to think like you get more of that on the other side. You just become so much freer and, just making sure though that you are able to have like staying fit, doing good, having a social network, all the important things to be able to remain happy. So, yeah,
Mm.
thank you for that wisdom. That was great.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. It's such a wonderful gift that we find that as we get older. It's a shame we don't have opportunities to realize that more as we're younger because we're so caught up in life, in the things that aren't important, that you learn aren't important, may take focus, unnecessary focus as you're younger. And so I do think there are a lot of benefits to getting older, but that's definitely one of them, that you can just let go of things that really don't matter. And you start to focus on what does, and your definition of what does changes, I think. And having friends that you enjoy being with really influences that. There are people who should you learn. There are people who should lift you up. That there are people who don't care about the unnecessary. There are people who will be there for you no matter what. And I think those are things that you start to hone in on as you get older and you look for those people in your life. And they're the ones you want to spend your time with, for sure.
Allison, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I was thinking, I was thinking about how maybe with the exception of Jean, who I knew earlier, these are all new friendships for me. Like I've
Hmm.
you just met all these women in the last couple of years, and for many of them, I always think it's funny when you meet somebody our age and they've like basically lived a whole life before you've met them. They've had kids or not or whatever. They've had a career maybe, and like I'm just thinking like I hardly know any of that about any of these
Yeah.
women. It's very much kind of where are we at now?
Yeah.
And I think that ties into the um we don't need to impress each other. Maybe when we're
Mhm.
younger, we're like comparing jobs or kids' accomplishments or I don't know,
Yeah.
things like that. And this is just like who are you now? And, how does that kind of fit into this group and our relationship and everything? And so it sort of takes away all of that, whatever the competition was or the kind of the comparisons or whatever that maybe we all had, when we were younger and we were sort of doing all that together. We've all sort of landed at this stage from all these different directions and we're all kind of in this place here. And that's how we know each other, in this
Hmm.
sort of one context. And it's not like we don't have conversations about any of those things, but it's really kind of more about the here and now and the going forward. At least that's is that what you find too, Trish?
I
It
do.
occurred to
Yeah.
me as you were talking. That's different than friendships from earlier in our lives, I think.
Mm. I would agree with that. I think in a in an extraordinary way, this group of women coming together kind of level sets, where we are. Situational friendships that or may have started as situational are allowed to, grow and be nourished by the work that we're doing together But I think to Allison's point, just coming together at this time and place, we level set there. What happened before, what was important before kind of didn't matter. And it gave everyone the freedom to just say, here I am now, and that's good. And what I am now is good. And everybody else agrees. And I think that's the difference, that you come at this group and just say, here I am. And everybody's perfect with that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's such an interesting perspective, from listening to that from myself, like who is in that, this is my job, this is my family, these are my kids, and just to see like, oh yeah, that's like all gone in a matter of a couple decades. And then you're just left, with you as a person and being in that present moment.
And
Yeah.
it's perfect. I will tell you, it's everything that used to define you can change, and you get
Mhm.
to decide what that is moving forward.
Mhm.
Because it doesn't have to be your job or your kid's success, as Allison was saying, and all those things we used to use to say, look at me, look
Mhm.
how good I am, or
Mhm.
the things that we used to feel like we had to do, like don't have people over if your house isn't clean, and make the right dinner, all those things that you felt like you had to do. Now it's like, come on over, girls, don't mind the dust around the house or the dirty dishes. Because we all reach this point where you just say, yeah, doesn't matter. Nobody cares. No one ever really did, but we put that on ourselves, and
Mhm.
that's a shame. So it's so great to reach a point where you just say, yeah, I'm going to let that go, and good riddance to all that.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
I guess to tie in with that, I feel like you both have just given myself and the listeners so many great insights and so much wisdom. Um, but in hindsight is 2020 in many aspects of our life. And when it comes to the concept of aging and empowerment as an old lady, what advice would you give your younger self or the younger woman listening?
You mean in terms of aging or just in terms of where you're at now and how to kind of live your life now? Or,
Whatever speaks to you.
yeah.
Whatever comes to your mind first, maybe.
I mean, kind of, related to what we just said, it's like, don't wait till you get to our age to dump all that stuff, it doesn't matter in the end. And, I think the whole idea of retiring, so when I was thinking about retiring, I retired on the early side. And when I was thinking about it, I was with some friends who were in a similar type of job to mine. And I was like, oh, what am I going to say if I go to a party and I meet people and they say, what do you do? And and they said, Allison, your identity is not your job title.
That's right.
And it was like the best advice I think I've ever gotten. It's like you can answer however you want to that. You can still say you're a marine scientist because you will still be a marine scientist, or
Hmm.
you can just say, well, I'm somebody who really likes to swim in the ponds on Cape Cod and pick up garbage. Or I'm somebody who whatever likes to blah blah blah. But don't get so hung up on that your identity is whatever you want to make it, and it's
Hmm.
however you want to define it, and it doesn't have to impress anybody else, or it's there for you, and however you want to define yourself is that's your identity. Nobody else gets to dictate what it is, or what counts as your identity. So I think that's a big one for me. And just not letting other people be the judge of you, I guess.
Amen. You're so cool. I love that. You're such a great person. I love that. I would say it's all everything she said, I would say too. I would also say choose your friends carefully. Be
Mm.
mindful of who you want to travel this life journey with. And if there are those who don't support you and your thoughts and mission and creativity and passions, then choose to not spend time with them and really decide that and know that that's okay and that you can let go of judgments and be freer to choose what's right for you at any point in time. And those things will change. The friends you have when you're young will be different than the friends you have as you age. But there'll always be some there. And whoever they are the ones you know that will lift you up.
Hmm.
Then those are the kind of people that you should spend time with. Those are the people that you want, who you know will always support you in your life. Then choose to spend time with them. Other people may be there and you may feel obligations to be with them. You may feel that whether it's family, friends, work, people at work, colleagues, you may feel obligated to do certain things, but let that go. That I feel that there are circumstances in your life that you're required to do certain things as part of your job or society. But choose carefully how long you have to prolong those kind of things. I guess what I'm saying is life is so short that spend it with people you have fun with, that
Hmm.
are supporting your efforts and your passions and make you a better person. And I think that's if I looked back and said, "Hey Trish, here's a couple of words of advice. As you get older, you're going to want to know this." I think that's something that I would have wanted to embrace sooner in my life. Um, yeah.
I think that's great advice from both of you. And I think I kind of know that, and maybe the listeners do too, but I think it's a great reminder and just to like double down on that. Don't just listen to it, but really think through that and how are you moving that through your life and really conceptualizing it because like you both said, life is so short. It happens so fast, and the older I get, I feel like the faster it's going.
Me too.
Yeah, another piece of retirement advice I
Yeah.
got that I think, thinking about it, I think there's no reason you couldn't do this. Oh, I have two actually.
Hmm.
One is so I have a friend who is in the State Department, and they make you retire at, I don't know, 62 or something like
Yeah.
that. I can't remember. And they give you this whole retirement course. And it's not
Hmm.
just finances, it's, how to do retirement. Because again, you've had this kind of high-powered career, and now all of a sudden you won't. And how are you going to cope with that? And they basically say, make a pie chart and think about how you want to divide your time, be deliberate about it. So it doesn't, like when you retire, it's like, you can just drift, or you can all of a sudden have all these people saying, come be on this board, come volunteer, and if you just say yes to everything, then all of a sudden, you're working 80 hours a week, and it's not necessarily what you want. So it's sort of like, okay, I want to spend 20% of time on my, on volunteer work, and 30% with friends and 10% with family, whatever
Hmm.
it is for
Hmm.
you, exercise, travel, whatever it is, um, make it deliberate, and kind of check in occasionally and say, how am I doing with this? Do I want to change it, or am I just falling into this other, do I really want to kind of shift my life so that I'm doing what I think is a higher priority and not just whatever gets dumped on me first or whatever. So that's one that I think that was like a really useful concept. The other thing that I thought of when I was unfortunately at the funeral of a fairly young colleague who died,
Hmm.
and was, it was mobbed. There were so many people there, and everybody just had glowing all these wonderful things. And I thought, you start thinking like, what would mine look like? And who would be there?
Yeah.
And what would they say? And to sort of think about, at age 30, write your own obituary and then live your life to make it true. How will you want to be remembered, and what do you want people saying at your funeral? And then live so that it's true. If you have all these aspirations and things you want to do, well, then make it happen. If you want to be remembered as this really kind, helpful, giving person, then make it happen. You got to act that way. And whatever it is, I think very few people will say, I want to be remembered as the best accountant that ever lived, or,
Yeah,
whatever, and
100%.
and yet that's how people live their lives, as they live, 90% of their waking hours are spent working. And so to really think about, looking back on your life, even if that's 40 or 50 years in the future, and
Yeah.
what you want that to have looked like. What do you want to be able to say that you accomplished, or that, people will be saying about you?
That's a really good point. I feel like, when people, if they're working, hopefully they're finding it purposeful and finding meaning in it. But at the end of the day, I feel like mostly what I hear from people looking back on their lives is making sure they did the things that they wanted to do, like not having regrets, and that it all comes down to relationships
Mhm.
and how they showed up for people in their life and how connected they are, because we're such social beings. And so that is very good advice.
I would
And
add to Allison.
sorry, I think it should be like a high school English assignment to write
Yeah,
your own
Oh,
obituary.
I did
yeah, we
that.
need to add that into the curriculum. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
I actually had to do that for a course I took in my
Did
master's
you?
program. Yeah, first assignment out of the gate was
Wow.
right a bit. It was so hard because I would add to Allison's story of, make that happen. It's not only what you want people to remember you for, but it's who you want to be there celebrating your life. Who were
Mm.
those important people in your life? And is everybody crying, or are they all cheering that you're gone? You really want to make sure that
Mhm.
I heard someone say that you start life crying, and you should finish life very, very happy with everyone else crying. You come out as a baby crying, you should leave with everyone else crying. And there's so much wisdom to that, because I think one of the resounding tenets of what we continue to do in our group, and Allison said a few times, make that happen. We're those kind of people, and our group is that kind of people.
Yeah.
We make things happen. And I think for women particularly, you may not feel empowered to do that. Your life may have not taught you how to do that.
Mhm.
I think, but it's never a time when you can say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do that. Find friends who do. If you can't do it, you bring a different value. Partner with someone who has that strength, but don't stop. Learn from them, learn how to make things happen. Understand that you bring enough value, whatever those things are that you do best, that's enough. And then find
Mm.
other people who can help you make it happen, whatever that goal is, whatever your passion is. But don't stop and say, I'm not capable, because you are.
Mhm.
You are capable of part of it, and others can help you get the rest of the way. I heard this really cool thing that someone said to me once, and it said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Mm.
And I feel like that's so true with women. We go far when we're together. We do really good things as groups. And I hope that others will be inspired. If you feel that you don't have that strength or the wisdom to get you where you want to go, then find a buddy. Find a friend, find a girlfriend, or another woman who can, other women uh, who can just help you on that journey, because they're out there. I promise you, they're out there looking for other people to do it with too.
I love that. So, speaking of journeys, we are coming to the top of the hour. And on your journey of the old ladies against underwater garbage, what is next for you as a group? And what are some of the ways that us as listeners or the general public can help support you?
I think our next thing that we're sort of working to figure out is, there's been so much response to this, and there's so many
Mhm.
people who want to join us, both on Cape Cod and elsewhere,
Mhm.
around the country, around the state, around the world even, is to figure out how to kind of package what we've learned in
Mhm.
a way that we can train other groups. We've actually trademarked the name because we don't want just anybody going out there and calling them because if something bad happens or they're not, they do things that aren't great. We don't want it to reflect on us. And
Mhm.
so, if you're going to call yourself OLAUG, you need to do things kind of in the way that we've learned from experience. And so one of the things we're going to be doing, I think, over the next 6 months or so is putting together kind of a training manual with standard operating procedures, the safety protocols, et cetera. And then I think we will actually, at least for the more like people in the state, hold some actual workshops, in-person workshops to train other groups how to kind of go out and do what we do because we have learned a lot in terms of how it makes sense to do things, both logistically, safety wise, et cetera. We have a whole safety training that we do now that's required of everybody. And yeah, so figuring out how to kind of capture the publicity high, if you will, that we're on to spread the joy and spread the good work that we're doing and enable other people to be able to do that in other places, but in a way that's respectful of our group and of the lessons that we've learned. Um, so I don't know, we've got two women this summer who are going to be making documentary films about us, one kind of shorter form, one a little bit longer form of
Yay.
they'll be, at film festivals and
Yeah.
potentially on like the New York Times, whatever, Guardian,
Mhm.
whatever, Op Docs or whatever they're
Mm.
called. That type of thing. So that's kind of fun to think about. Um, yeah, what else? We give a lot of presentations locally
Mhm.
to a lot of different types of groups that request us to come and present and talk about what we do. Trish, do you have anything to add to
Um,
that?
we, we have in an effort to help, grow, as Allison said, we want to maybe create other chapters and guide that. But we also have a waiting list of people who want to join our group. So that's a great resource of older women, and we've reached maximum capacity for our original team. So we're trying to define what next and how can we
Mhm.
direct that passion and energy and all of that talent to something really good. So we're in discussions now about how we would expand and support other women who want to get involved. And even if it can't be to our specific group, how do we direct them or how can we help them and encourage their efforts to want to be part of something like this? So I think that will be a big part of what we try to work on moving forward. It's a big question to answer. Once you
Mhm.
I think when people see how much fun we have in what we're doing, that I would want to be involved too. I would want to say, that sounds great. People are naturally attracted to things like this. So I think that's something we'll spend some time doing, what the best plan is to help guide others who
Mhm.
are doing this, whether other chapters or just in their own lives, how they can help. We're also uh, continuing other press opportunities that we have. We really want the ripple effect from all of this great news about what we're doing to continue to spread. There are some network TV show that is interested in some of what we do and the documentaries. So yeah, we have opportunity to keep spreading this message. And I think that's what we'll spend some time doing. And then we have 20 pond cleanups on the schedule for this year. So there's quite a bit of our main focus that will take our time over the summer.
That is very exciting. I
Yeah.
cannot wait to see these documentaries.
Yeah. Yeah, we're excited. We're excited to be part of them and to encourage the women who are doing them, to make sure that they have an opportunity to show how talented they are. It's
Well,
awesome.
yeah, and I love that you're also setting up protocols for other women to be able to, if they want to do swimming cleanups, or like you said, even if it's not swimming, if it's something how they want to do good in their communities, but maybe your group has already set up their protocols or how to do it, or even if, even maybe if they want to involve media and spread their own news about how they're doing this, that that is wonderful because maybe they just need that extra little push to get it going or that extra knowledge to be shared with them.
Yes, I think so. Another effort that we're following, and Allison's been talking a bit about this, and I think it's really cool, is taking the trash that we're collecting. We do have some people, there's a lot of scientists in Falmouth from Woods Hole and other places, and they want to analyze that trash and see what's being collected and how we can
Mm,
make some adjustments publicly to say that these certain things are no longer allowed near areas. Or environments that are fragile, like our ponds. And so we also are considering taking that trash to some of the local artists who will create sculptures with it. And we can then have installations that will be educational throughout the different towns on the Cape so people can see. Because so much of what we struggle with is once this trash goes underwater, it's invisible to people.
mhm,
And there's this sense of I don't care because it's not right here,
mhm.
it's out there. And that's something that we're really trying to move away from and educate, more about so that people see the harm.
That's good. And
Yeah.
educating in a very kind of fun way, right? So you're not shaming people into what they're
Right.
doing, but
Yeah.
being like, hey, this is what is coming out of the ponds, and just getting people to think more about that as they're seeing it.
Yes.
But
It's
one thing that's been nice is many of the pond associations that we've worked with, people are shocked to see what we end up pulling out of the ponds. I mean, we end up with like huge piles of, it's a lot of golf balls, a lot of beer cans, a lot of kids' toys, dog toy, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But it's tires, it's tire rims, it's, bowling balls. It's, things, it's like entire docks that somebody
Yeah.
builds a new one and they just throw the old one in the pond, even though it's maybe pressure treated wood and all kinds of stuff that just should not be in there. And we've had several of them say, we are going to make sure that you're not back here next year pulling out just as much stuff. It really raises
Mm,
just having that visual in front of you,
mhm.
like Trish said, if it's invisible, you might not think there's that much there. But when we gather it all and we make a big pile on the beach, it can be shocking. And we are very careful not to shame. There's no shaming involved at all. Some of this stuff has been there for 100 years. We pull out
Yeah.
the old bottles and all kinds of stuff. Um, but but there's also, 100 beer cans right off of one dock, that kind of thing
Right. Yeah.
that at some point it's kind of like, really, people, like this is your pond and this is how you're treating it. And so when people get that visual, I think it's really helpful um, to make them realize that it is a real problem. So
I think it's so funny when we pick up trash around a particular home like that. I remember being outside one of the houses and there were so many golf balls and the homeowner was on the lawn. And I get it. There was a perfect slope. You just wanted to hit a golf ball off that yard. But I think as he saw us picking them up and one at a time, putting
Mhm.
them in the basket in the kayak over and over again, and then waving up to him and just saying, "Have a great day." There was no, we didn't throw him up on his yard. We didn't say, "What were you thinking?"
Yeah.
These are toxic, they're going to break down and affect the marine biology. We didn't do any of that. We just slowly put them in the basket and said, "Have a great day." And I think people realize that we respect this place And could they please do the same? And we
Mm.
respect them. We're not in the business of public humiliation.
Yeah,
We want people to feel bad about this. We want them to join that effort and feel good about helping. So that's kind of how we approach it.
a great way to get that message across.
Mhm.
Well, I feel like I have taken up enough of both of your time today. Trish and Allison, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to me. I've had the best time with you. I've had the most engaging conversation. I've learned so much myself, and I hope our listeners have too. And I'm so excited to just spread this message and try and change that cultural mindset that we have, which I think we are doing. Let's try and change it a little bit faster, speed things up. But I love all the media attention that you've been getting. So thank you for saying yes to everything, because I think by doing this, we really are helping changing that society, whether it be in women and empowerment with older women, or just that environmental cleanup, or just how can you do good and have a good time doing it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kim. We really
Thank you
appreciate
very
your
much, Kim.
interest.
It was
Yeah.
great.
Thanks for helping us get our message out and our mission, supporting our mission. We really appreciate it.